As India starts its G20 presidency, the world's fastest growing economy endures geopolitical change, making it pertinent to analyze what lies ahead. Times Network, through its flagship platform, India Economic Conclave, continues the legacy of championing the economic agenda of the country. The 9th edition of the India Economic Conclave focused on India as the emerging third superpower. IDFC First Bank presents the India Economic Conclave, powered by Google. Harnessed conversations to transform India's economic aspirations into action through specially curated sessions of thinkers, policymakers, economists, business leaders and global influencers. The event not only got to witness the thought-provoking idea towards the development of the nation, but also experienced an immersive performance by 3-time Grammy Award winner Ricky Cage.
Reach out, let us join hands and sing this world song. Reach out, let us join hands and sing this world song.
In this episode, Yashika Singh, EVP, Corporate Affairs, Communications and SNR of Pernod Ricard India, discusses how to sustainably drive India's growth juggernaut with National Editor ET Now Aisha Faridi. And in the second half, two dynamic women leaders, Shobna Kamineni, Executive Vice Chairperson of Apollo Hospitals, and Dr. Jyotsna Suri, Chairperson and MD of the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group, bring the spotlight on India Inc.'s Nari Shakti with Padmaja Joshi, Executive Editor of Times Now.
But Yashika, tell me, a private company such as yours, Pernod Ricard, how is it that you try and helm and make sure that as a company you do enough in the country that you operate in, India is what we're talking about here, to try and instill and further the economic juggernaut?
We've been in India for 30 years. This year, Pernod Ricard completes 30 years in India. It's been a fantastic journey. And I think the next 30 look good, if those are the sort of numbers that one is, hearing about. We see ourselves at Pernod Ricard as creators of conviviality. We see ourselves as people who create human connections. So that sense prevails through all our activities, all our operations, all our sales, commercial activities, including our sustainability activities and the work that we do with our stakeholders. 97% of our portfolio is made in India and sold in India. And I think that's one of the biggest ways that we contribute to the growth trajectory for India. We have operations in India across 29 different locations. And by doing so, we are adding to the economic activity, to the jobs that we create. We create about 1,400 jobs directly, another 10,000 indirectly. We also have a huge program around sustainability, which is very much geared towards the government's Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, but even beyond that to the social and economic agenda, development agenda of the government. So I think those are the various ways in which private companies such as ourselves, will contribute to this economic juggernaut. And I think we'll be one of the, private companies will be one of the biggest factors to drive this 35 trillion growth. Through meeting many of these factors such as operating in India and creating sustainable operations.
So tell me a little bit more about your initiatives, because more and more the focus now when it comes to companies, especially when you look at them from an investment perspective, is ESG. You want companies around you to be ESG compliant. How is it that a company such as yours is conscious about what you're doing, not just for the economy, but for the environment and climate as such as well?
Yeah, I think ESG is environment, social governance. I think most companies are starting to recognize that this is a very important stakeholder, which is the investor class, which is really looking at the ESG factors. But more and more, it's sort of going beyond that class of stakeholder. It is consumers, it's the society at large, it's your customers, governments. Everybody is starting to look at ESG parameter and holding companies responsible for it, right? And when Pernod Ricard looks at it, we look at it from a returns to responsibility factor and not just returns to investment. How do we look at it? We look at it from an entire value chain perspective. So across our entire value chain, we try and build practices which are sustainable. We classify it under 4 pillars, if I may get a little pedantic. We sort of start from nurturing of the terroir, which is the ground where our product, the raw material comes from. And we're looking at climate change issues there. Then we look at circular making, which is a big part of, I think, most manufacturing companies are now looking at circular making, and that is our nod to recognizing that resources are shared and wastage needs to be avoided, reduced as much as possible. And circular making and packaging is a big part of our work as well. Then, of course, we look at people as well as responsible hosting. So that's how we sort of work along the entire value chain to drive more sustainable outcomes.
You know, since you talked about your basic raw material comes from the earth, and I think you more than anyone would have a better sense of what the climatic changes are doing to earth and thereby your produce and your basic raw material. Tell me a little bit more about how is it that you are a conscious company in that sense, right? And we talked about it when we talked about ESG compliance as well. And what is the reality on ground of climate change and how we need to now sit up and take notice because this is a hard-hitting reality?
Yeah, I think the government of India is well cognizant of its responsibilities around climate change. And as I said earlier, many of our goals are aligned with the goals of the government. What's the reality on the ground? Well, it's different for different people, sure. You know, and I think we're all at different stages of recognition and mitigation when it comes to this factor, and that's absolutely fine. I think we all need to be able to do, you know, what we can at this point of time while educating ourselves about the implications. When we look at it, we look at our responsibility extending beyond just our operations. We look at the entire vendor and supplier chain as well, and we look at downwards as to how do we empower, enhance the workings of our vendors as well, over and above what we need to do. So procurement, the way we procure, could that change? Where we procure from and the people who are producing it for us, could we encourage them to try different ways of doing things? We actually have an ongoing program where we are looking at adding efficiency as well as sustainability into our operations as well as our supply chain. And it's a very conscious driven program which over the next 10 years is looking to meet targets on scope 3 climate reduction, scope 3 carbon reduction targets that are being built into the way we do our business. So that's how we are looking at it, and very, very purposefully working out exactly where the issues are coming in and then building in metrics to deal with those issues.
Yashika, you've been here for the last 30 years, like you said, in India. You perhaps would be best placed to tell us how Indian consumer patterns and behaviors are changing.
Yeah, consumers are also at different points. Yeah. Isha, it's all consumers are, the Indian consumer is a very varied consumer. Consuming at different price points, right? And so therefore that informs a lot of their choices and their information and the knowledge and how they're making those decisions. I think it's incumbent upon companies like ours, who are leaders in the sector, to sometimes push the envelope on consumer, what is acceptable to the consumer. We have done something like that. Our product comes in an outer packaging, which is a cardboard packaging. And as of last year, we did away with the outer packaging on a significant portion of our portfolio. So our product now is sold without a packaging, which is a big step. I cannot imagine any FMCG company sort of stepping up and saying we'll sell our products without the outer package. We took that step, and obviously we were ready for some amount of consumer backlash because our consumer knows the product on the basis of what it looks like in packaging, right? That's the relationship the consumer has with the product, yeah. Right? And we did away with that. And we did it because, we knew that by doing away, we were removing 500 million monocartons. So those 500 million monocartons in a year, gone. What that meant was 7,300 tons of carbon reduction coming from packaging material. What that meant was 2.5 lakh trees not being cut any longer to make that packaging. What that meant was that we got a much better water footprint because we were no longer using water to create that packaging, right? And what that also meant was that our waste to landfill coming from packaging went to zero. All fantastic outcomes, right? Absolutely. Thank you. We are very proud of it. But what that meant was this was great for the company, but was the consumer seeing all this? Was the consumer involved enough to realize that the product is still a great product, but it's a more sustainable product?
Yeah, it's for companies in India to actually change consumer behavior, right? Yeah. But Yashika, here's to next 30 years. Absolutely. All the very best, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
first start by asking you, do you think of it as a compliment or slightly reductive when you are referred to as women CEOs?
Good one. Yeah,
I've always wondered because...
No, I don't take it as a compliment at all. I'll use the advantage of being a woman CEO because you get noticed and there's so few of us, but I think it's quite insulting. I'm not there as a woman CEO because I'm a woman, but just because I'm just as capable.
Thank you. So, when a lot of people think, Ms. Suri, that is there any specific talent that women get to the table which helps them in business? That you are specialized at your job because you bring a certain talent set by virtue of being a woman. How do you look at this argument, and do you think it applies to you? Have you had that personal experience ever?
So I think, you have to be having the requisite talent in any case to get into a leadership role. So whether you're a man or a woman, it really doesn't make any difference. The difference is the perspective, in the sense that a woman probably brings a little more empathy to the way she approaches a situation. Perhaps a little bit more patience that she brings in. But I think talent, you have to be talented enough, or you have to have the requisite qualities to be able to get into a leadership role. So it's not a man or a woman.
Ma'am, between the both of you, you have a wealth of experience in your respective industries. When you started out, as opposed to now, the number of women, not just in the workforce, but also in the boardroom, has gone up, maybe not exponentially, but substantially. Has that in any way changed the lot of women in the workforce?
If you look at the statistics, I don't really think we've moved the needle enough. But I think it's a generational issue. But if you look at medical colleges, if you look at STEM, if you look at business colleges, the ratio of women has definitely gone up. So, from when I started, the number of CVs I got for women was so much less. Now it's actually really increased. And I think that's a good one. That for every job, for whether it's a senior or a junior job, there are women out there we're not equal yet. But someday, considering the workforce, if you look at true equality, it can happen.
CII, for one, made a policy that they would try and get together women in startup and have a bank of ideas of what the women could do together. Now, in business, very frequently you speak of the wolf pack, where men would encourage other men and promote other men, and together they would progress. Do you think there is scope for something like that to be done for women as well? A she-wolf pack, if you will.
I don't think women are really, initiating anything like that I can see right now. But by the way, CII is her. She's past president CII, and I'm past president FICCI. And just for a little bit of just aside, within the three industrial bodies, which is CII, FICCI, and ASSOCHAM, if you put them all together, there are about 326 years. And there have only been 5 women presidents. 1 in CII, 1 in ASSOCHAM, and 3 in FICCI. So I don't know whether that wolf pack is going to happen with us, or the she-wolf pack is going to happen very soon. However, I definitely think that, as I agree with Shobna when she says that there's a lot more women coming up and applying for jobs. And for example, I can say with a great amount of pride that 50% of my senior leadership is already women. And we do want to take up the number across board to about 30%. We also have 2 national award-winning executive women chefs, which is a rare thing to happen because chefs are very much a man's world. So things are moving definitely in the right direction. Women are coming up to the front. As a matter of fact, for the last 16 years, I stepped into these shoes, into Lalit's shoes 16 years ago. it was a lot different then. And as I see year on year, there is an improvement and there is many more women coming into the front and into leadership roles.
For families to have women go out and work, there needs to be a huge amount of confidence building on the part of the employer as well. Over the years, what are the things that you've done to ensure that women are actively encouraged to come out and work with you?
So we try to provide a very safe environment for them. That's, I think, the biggest question mark that all families have or the female workforce has, is that how safe is the environment that we're working in? We as a group have made it mandatory for ourselves to create a safe environment, not only for women, but all other marginalized sections as well. Whether it's the LGBTQ community, whether it's the differently abled people. As a group, we have actually stepped up hugely to try and make this a safe place for all people to work. So, yes, the support from the family is very important, particularly if they are living in a joint family. Well, a lot of nuclear families are coming up now, but the support from the family helps. For example, if there's a young child, and if there is someone at home to take care of that child, the woman is able to work, and perhaps she doesn't take a sabbatical. Otherwise, very often, with childbirth, even despite the fact that you give them that leave, very often a woman has to take the step back and nurture the child for a bit and then come back into action. So I think that's where the gap happens, and very often one has tried to figure out why is it that women lose out in the leadership roles. And it's because of this, because they take a step back, and while their colleagues, the male colleagues, have probably gone ahead, they come back maybe after 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. For them to catch up is not so easy.
Anything in particular that comes to your mind, other than, of course, providing a safe environment, given also that both of your industries are 24/7 industries, where women, just like men, have to work round the clock?
I think the pandemic taught us certain things, a lot. We're over 50% women. And if the women had really left the workforce in hospitals during the pandemic, I think India would have suffered exponentially much, much more. And the thing is that a lot of these people, please understand that they had a choice to go back home, but they didn't. They said, this is our job. So I think that what jobs give you, if you give them a sense of respect and a sense of purpose. So any of the new joinees that come in, whether it's men or women, one thing is that in healthcare we can tell them, anything you do, whether it's selling a medicine or whether it's even working in the IT, in our digital health, I said, every action you take actually saves a life. So I think that purpose is something that if you can give, and that's what the pandemic did. And I agree with Jyotsna. She just covered everything that good companies do, and especially women-led companies and companies that have a disproportionate share of women. But there's still challenges out there. And I think one of the things that really helped that this government did is about the maternity leave. We all cribbed about it at the beginning, saying that so many days off, why should we hire? But then it just became smart, because women, if you can really pull them in and give them that kind of comfort, get them back in, you will find that our attrition among women is much lower. So we have to understand that there are advantages, and these are people that can grow and now work from home. And I think my daughter the other day on something, she said, she's expecting, and she said, this leave should not come after the baby is born. In the first 3 months, we actually suffer, So why can't we make this, just choose how you want to take that 3 months? And I think that's an interesting thing, that companies should have conversations. So are our companies first open to have conversations? To me, that's a big one. And I think this is something that we should continue, people like Jyotsna, myself, all of you, the press, any woman out there, push the envelope and make this a better place for women, more purpose-led. Because you'll find, really, if you look at history, a lot of women, they're super at mediation, and they're also the biggest number of martyrs, because they like to take up causes. So I think this is a cause that is worth it.
Despite industry bodies making a conscious effort of having a fair representation, are we really any closer to having genuine pay parity?
I think that we need some superstars to shout out about that. It was Billie Jean King in tennis, and all, the whole lot of them as a groundswell. And I see no reason why women should be paid less. It's never done in our companies. You definitely can't pay nurses less than you pay the male nurses. There's some equality in that. But we've run out of time. But so one thing, then I don't want to go out on this note, and you may not ask me the question, but I do think that this conversation needs to be layered, that we're not two genders anymore. Yes, women have, for centuries probably have not been equal to the male, but now there's 72 other genders. So how are you going to look at all that? And I think that companies need to, and Jyotsna, you pointed out to that, and what you do in your company, fantastic, we need to do that. But this is the last point I really want to make. This whole conversation on generative AI that can either displace jobs or change the world around, please remember that there are more men writing the conversations than there are women. So if your ChatGPT is going to give you male answers and you don't know what it is, so I think to me that's a whole level of scare that we've not looked at. What is the women data that you're giving in that? Because history is always written by the victor. So if you have 70 men writing out all the things of ChatGPT, you're going to get male-dominated replies. So to me, I stay awake at night thinking, we need parity there, then the rest will happen.
Wow, from a male gaze, we've actually come to a male language. Who would have thought?
You have to think it.
Well, I think the conversation has come a full circle from talking about whether it's only about male and female CEOs to talking about an even more layered, nuanced conversation on the various genders now that we have to address. For that, thank you very much, both ladies, for joining. Thank you.